Hello and welcome to the Just Another Football Podcast. It's a new thing we're trying out, and it should be good. I've got Harry Nichols with me.
How you doing, Bob?
I'm
Good
good.
to be here with you, mate. Good to be starting
Good
this
to
up.
hear. And what this basically is a look over of last weekend's football results, and then a look forward to next week's. It's just another football podcast. It says it in the name. Throughout it, we're going to go through last week's games, probably talk about the most important one, and of course Bolton Wanderers, because I've got to have a bit of bias in there. And then we'll look forward into the games that are coming in the next weeks. And it should be good, should be fun. If you don't like it, I apologise. So,
well, it is just another football podcast.
It is just another football podcast. Yeah, there's lots of.
It is what it says on the tin.
Arsenal beat Man United with a penalty from Aubameyang in one of the minutes.
It's 69th, I think.
Great number. But my question is, what do we learn from the game? And I think Ollie made some mistakes. There's questions over Ollie constantly, but he made some, for my personal opinion, tactical mistakes. I think he got his matchups wrong in the midfield, and that's where I think Arsenal won it. With I
tend to agree with you. Obviously, it's easier for me to approach the game from an Arsenal perspective because that's the team I support, for those who don't already know. But looking at it from a United perspective, it's difficult in football nowadays because I think the argument is that you want to approach the game and be proactive in terms of how you want to play it, and there's less focus on what the opposition's doing.
Yeah.
And it's more about inserting your style. And I think we've seen this more with the likes of Guardiola and Klopp, especially coming to the Premier League and sort of obviously building the squads and the teams that have done. And they have their way of playing. They might make changes here and there, but generally it doesn't change that much game to game. And I think there is a balance between that and also taking into account the opposition you're playing. And I have to say, when I saw the United team, I thought there were plenty of pretty talented players on the team sheet. They've got very good players in attacking areas. But when I looked at the shape, they'd gone with a diamond, which they obviously played in midweek against Leipzig and got a very good result with it. From a tactical matchup point of view, I was probably more enthused that they played that than had they matched us up with a 3-4-3 or they'd gone 4-2-3-1, because I just thought that the way we play, looking to get down the flanks and get width from our wing backs or full backs, it kind of, with the Arsenal team, it was a hybrid between a 4-4-2 and a 3-4-3 at times, depending on where we wanted to get Aubameyang and where Saka looked to position himself. But what was abundantly clear before the game to me was that we would have joy in wide areas. So when I saw that United were playing four central midfielders in a diamond, I thought that it wasn't necessarily a style to combat what we would bring and to sort of look to approach the game from that point of view. And it was more about getting all of their... they've got a lot of central midfielders, and it was about getting as many in as possible. I know they had a good result against Leipzig, and that might have impacted on the decision a bit more. But yeah, I tend to agree with you. When I look at it from a tactical point of view, I think he did make a mistake playing the diamond.
And if I ask you the question, where's all of Arsenal's creativity come from this year? It's been in those wide positions with Saka and
it's the fullbacks, and especially Bukayo Saka down the left. I think he's been very, very good. It certainly doesn't come from midfield, central areas, and it doesn't come from Lacazette sort of playing off him. It definitely comes from the wing backs and the wingers. So it kind of, it played into our hands a little bit, I thought, in terms of how they matched us up and how we approached the game. The diamond didn't help them. He changed it at half time. So it was pretty clear to him it wasn't working. I think it was clear to everyone else that was watching it wasn't working. And you're absolutely right. That's where we have joy in those wide areas. We're not especially free scoring and prolific, but when we do create chances, it's in those areas.
I also thought the selection of Pogba seemed really smart in the middle of the week because his main strength, I think, is having the ability to dribble in the midfield, which I think is a rare quality.
Yeah, he set up the first goal doing it, didn't he? He broke between the lines and slipped it through to Greenwood, and it was a really good goal.
But when you got Partey on him, you just can't do the same.
I agree, and that is what it was. But Partey just matched him up man for man. Pogba said it in his interview after the game. He said that they went man for man, and it was quite clear from the start that Bellerin dropped on him a little bit, but really as the game went on, especially Partey tracked him, I mean, he had a great game in midfield party, it must be said. He had the most tackles, had the most passes, most dribbles. He won the most duels, and he actually completed more progressive passes than the entire United midfield diamond. So when we're talking about they played this diamond to get all these central midfielders in there, it didn't especially work in terms of how the game actually panned out. And you're absolutely right in terms of Partey. He did a job on Pogba. I mean, I think for all the qualities he brings, certainly what he brought to the game was he's physical. His positioning is very good, and he's very good at sort of. He's one of those players. He finds a way to nick the ball away. It's sort of an unsung trait in football, but they nickname him the Octopus because he just nicks. He's everywhere. Like he gets a foot in all over the pitch, and certainly on Pogba. I mean, when he gave away the penalty, but he didn't have a good game from an attacking perspective. He didn't bring them that extra dimension they needed in the midfield.
Creativity, which I think Donny van der Beek would have, just because he's more of a passer. And I thought when he came on, he was a bit more of a difference. Maybe it's because it was coming to the end of the game and Arsenal were going to go deeper.
It's a mix, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, from what I've heard about him, and there seems to be this kind of debate going on: can him and Bruno play in the same team? I think there's a misconception, either with pundits. You wouldn't expect the United coaching staff and Solskjaer to be wrong about the player they brought in, but they don't seem to be especially willing to play him in the same team as Bruno Fernandes.
Even though, in my eyes, they're different players. If Bruno's that...
Yeah, well, that's what I've heard as well.
He's that attacking midfielder, that 10 almost, that's going to get, give you lots of chances created, going to get a few goals. Donny's a bit deeper. He's a bit more, he's going to link up play with the defence and the wing and the midfield. Yeah, the midfield's a bit more. And I don't think they see him as that. I often don't think the biggest problem with Ollie, well, it's two problems. His signings, if he's doing them, and I don't think he fully understands his players sometimes.
Certainly not if he thinks they can't play in the same team, because by all accounts they don't play the same position. The Ajax style, they don't play with a number 10. When they got to the Champions League semi-final, they didn't play with a number 10. He was sort of playing on the right side of a 3. Yeah. So if that is indeed what he thinks, then, it's hard for me to say. I'm not a Man United fan. I don't have their best interests at heart. But it's kind of hard to argue the game could have gone worse had Van der Beek started it. Yeah. Certainly. So you can kind of look at it and say, yeah, it was probably a mistake.
It was a lot of mistakes. But I think, as well as Arsenal did, there's a lot of praise. A better team could have taken advantage, if you know what I mean.
So I think it's interesting. I think the way we actually approached the game was pretty similar to what we were doing in the first 20 minutes when we played Man City. It was sort of playing with this high block. Obviously they played a different shape to Man United, but essentially the fullbacks pushed up the pitch. We had the 3 forwards trying to stop passes into their midfielders because they're playing with 4 centre midfielders, trying to cut passing lanes. And we let their fullbacks have it quite a bit because we didn't think that they could hurt us, quite frankly. And actually, they didn't. And but Man City in that game,
in the weekend.
In that game, yeah. But in that game, they got through us the one time and they scored and they go 1-0 up. And that's kind of, I think, the difference in quality. Where Man United, they had 3 touches, I think, in the box in the first half, which is the lowest they've had under Solskjaer. I think 7% of their touches were in our third as well. So they couldn't get through the high block we were playing. We were cutting the passing lanes really well. I thought we were really aggressive, physical, which is not something you usually associate with Arsenal, but the way the centre-backs pushed onto their 2 forwards, especially whenever the ball went into Rashford and Greenwood, who, for all their qualities, you wouldn't associate them with their play with a back to goal.
Yeah, it's on the last shoulder.
Yeah, so it was, and what we did really well is because when it went into them, we were just hustling them and harrying them. It was very difficult for them to give it and go, and they couldn't get out their own half, to be honest. And that was what I thought we did well in the game, was in terms of creating loads and loads of chances and peppering their goal. That didn't come, but what we did really well is nullify their threats, and I think that is a trait that's often it often has negative associations. When you think of stopping a team playing, you typically think of a low block, sort of 5-4-1, 2 banks of 4. And while it was pragmatic in the way that we stopped them playing, it was from being aggressive and on the front foot, which, from an Arsenal fan's perspective, is exactly what we want to see. It's what we didn't see under Emery, where we would score and then we would drop back and invite pressure on. This was the opposite, and I know we're playing from level pegging, but it was getting up the pitch, being aggressive, not giving them time on the ball, not giving them an easy pass when it goes into feet, not giving them an easy turn. And I thought it worked really well for us. And then it was sort of that we couldn't quite translate that into chances and shots on goal. But the actual approach, I think, is what we've typically seen from Arsenal, particularly under Arteta. It's kind of favouring, trying to win the ball really high up the pitch, which you see a lot from Liverpool, actually. A lot of their chances are created through turning the ball over in dangerous positions. So they win it off the opposition centre midfield or their back four. And going from there, I think the problem is Arsenal fans, we've kind of been spoilt over the years with some of the creative players we've seen. I mean, if you go back as far as the Invincibles, you've got the likes of Bergkamp and Pires, and then you've got Cesc Fabregas and Santi Cazorla, Thomas Rosicky. Just really good, technically secure players who can play quick 1-2s. And you know, when you go into those congested areas where you have a deep lying back four or back five, these players could nip the ball and get it off each other. I don't think we have the same now. I don't think we have the same technical security. So he's sort of looking at it, Arteta. And I saw a good article about it on the Athletic, actually, sort of comparing the two teams. And what it was basically saying is Arsenal try to create chances through their structure, whereas Manchester United, it's through individual quality. So the likes of Bruno, the likes of Rashford, Martial when he plays, they're very gifted players. You don't necessarily associate them with a sort of set in stone way of playing necessarily. I mean, if you look at over the last 2 weeks, they've chopped and changed formations 3-4 times.
I don't think that's a bad thing.
It is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, and that is what I was going to add. The article does go on to say that you look at these two teams, neither of them the finished article at all, and we ended up winning the game. It can easily go the other way, and you can sort of look at it and go, yeah, Arsenal going in the right direction, but they don't have the quality. Whereas Man United, they've got the quality, but you're not quite sure about what they're trying to do, the way they're trying to play, the recruitment style side of it. It's a bit confused.
They've got quality that's better than Arsenal, but I don't think that they're Man United, the Man City's or Liverpool's level yet.
No, the quality isn't, and the technical coaching and the identity certainly isn't.
I do think though. Are there any pros to take from the game if you're a Man United fan? Because I actually think, and we haven't talked about Maguire much in the last couple of weeks, which is the politest thing you can say about him.
Yeah, no, it is definitely.
I think he had a good game against Leipzig. I thought he helped distribute against Leipzig to beat that press.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give it to them in that game. I think what gets forgotten is because of the last 20 minutes, they obviously score 4. Rashford comes on, grabs a hat trick, grabs the headlines, and fair play to the kid. He deserves credit for what he's doing off the pitch, by the way. I think we should obviously just touch on that. He's a real credit to the game.
What a guy.
Actually. For such a young man as well, so full praise to him for that. But what gets forgotten in that game is they were really under the pump, Man United. I mean, they scored in the first half, really good goal. Pogba plays Greenwood through, and it's a really good finish, but they couldn't get out their own half. It was a bit similar to yesterday. Yeah. It was different because Leipzig press in a different way. They're more aggressive. It's more kind of in your face, and it's less calculated and structured than what we were doing.
I think that's a success for Man United, though. I think if you look back at
no, if you push them hard, and that's why I think it worked so well. What we did is because we played a high block, but we didn't go mental with it. Do you know what I mean? Like the front three. Eventually, they stopped pressing so high, and they were like, do you know what we're going to do? We're just going to cut passing lanes. We're not going to give you an easy ball out. And then when you give it to someone in the midfield, then we'll press you, and then we'll put our fullbacks and our centre-backs on your front players, and then we'll make it difficult. And I agree, they want space in behind, but you can press them with structure. I think where Leipzig made a mistake, obviously they went for it,
they went full Nagelsmann.
Sort of 1-0 down, and they took a centre-back off. And they did. They went full Nagelsmann, you're absolutely right. But Man United defended well in that game, to keep a clean sheet against the team that were going into the game top of the Bundesliga,
they lost yesterday,
playing really good stuff. I think a lot of people thought they could go there and win the game.
They got to
when you win 5-0, you deserve a lot of credit. But I think the defense in that game was very good for them. I think on Sunday, I think he didn't have a bad game. Maguire, he didn't do anything, noticeably bad.
There was that header that he nearly brought back for someone to reach at the back post.
Well, that was probably their best chance of the game. If you actually look at the game, they didn't really cut us open from open play. And if he heads that back across to someone, or it could even be one of those that sort of goes in off the post at the other side.
But still, I actually thought he had a good
I
game.
think their defense. Wan-Bissaka was a bit sloppy a couple of times where crosses come over and he got underneath them. But their back four wasn't the problem yesterday.
No.
I think the overall picture is something different though, where they feel like they've got to play Fred and McTominay to give them that defensive security. Because what you don't want is their centre backs, especially, and Luke Shaw to an extent, getting dragged into one-on-ones in wide areas.
I agree. I think if you're looking for a transfer point of view, a lot of people say they need to sign a transfer a centre back, and they probably do rotation wise. But I don't think they need a starting centre back to replace Lindelof or Maguire. I think they need a starting DM to protect them better, like an Indeed.
Possibly. There's two perspectives on it. I watching the game yesterday, do I think they'd be better with someone like a Gabriel in there? I do, and I'm not getting carried away with it because I've seen a lot of centre backs at Arsenal over the past few years who have promised and then kind of ended up. You've seen what they are over a consistent period, so you need a bigger sample size. There were a couple of things to take from his performance yesterday. I really liked the presence he gave. I mean, every time the ball went into Rashford or Greenwood, he was at them. He's physical. He was aggressive. He's looking to win the ball. Obviously, he got booked, and Rob Holding got booked within about 2 minutes.
I looked at the half time and thought, how are they supposed to on the pitch?
Well, it's one of those that they committed clever fouls when they did. It was good in terms of not letting them get up the pitch and win free kicks in dangerous positions. If you're going to give a foul away, and this I've no doubt has come from Pep Guardiola with Arteta, because I've seen them do it to us when he was there. They're very good at giving fouls away and firstly not getting booked for them. Fernandinho's the best at it. He's the absolute best at it. Giving fouls away, not in dangerous positions, and also not getting booked for them. So you keep doing it. And obviously those two got booked, but what I like about Gabriel, and he's going to get it wrong sometimes, I've no doubt. I'm not saying he's going to get a red card, but he kept going in for those challenges. He made so many good challenges in the game. And while it might be a bit of inexperience, he's still a young man. I think he's only 22. So he's obviously going to make mistakes.
He's the right age, yeah.
He's got the right profile that I want in a centre-back. He looks like he's quick across the ground. He's very good in the air. He's strong in the tackle. And I really like the fact that he goes into duels. He doesn't back off. And I haven't seen him get beat yet. So you have to give it to him. Now, there was an instant in the second half where Greenwood put it past him in the corner. It was a good turn. And he was, maybe he's a bit lucky not to get sent off. I mean, I think it would have been harsh. I think had he been sent off, there would have been no excuse.
It's one of those, if he goes to VAR, then it's
not going to get overturned.
Yeah.
I completely agree. But no, I mean, I really liked their performance yesterday. As I said, what I liked most about it was the physicality of it. We really did not I've seen us go to Old Trafford against better Man United teams than this, admittedly, and just be bullied off the park. I mean, we hadn't won there for 14 years, and I think it's easy to say once you've won the game, but it didn't look like we were going to get beat for a lack of fight, a lack of stomach for the fight. If we were going to get beat, it would take an exceptional moment to sort of carve us open, and we'd be begrudging other things, not the way we approached the game, but maybe sort of our deficiencies in the final third rather than in the midfield and the defence and how we equipped ourselves.
I tell you what, Rob Holding's hairline has gone to shit since he's got injured.
Yeah, it's not good, is it? It's not
good. You've got somebody.
I don't want to hear slander about Rob Holding from you, mate. Former Bolton Wanderers product.
He's a good player. Played
I have to say, I was glad he was playing yesterday rather than Mustafi would have been the only other option. I have to say, when I saw Holding on the team sheet, I was a bit more becalmed about it. Because
I'll tell you what, though.
I'm not saying he's the finished article as a defender. Certainly
he's had too many injuries. I don't think he'll ever
There's questions about it. Well, what I thought was actually quite interesting point was when he had that really bad ACL injury. It was at Old Trafford. Yeah. Almost 2 years to the day, actually. It was sort of a month later. But it was a good moment for him, I thought, to get the clean sheet there. And he's starting to get back on track a bit, I think, with his
before that ACL, he looked good enough to be...
He did in a back three, he had the security. But I think what I was going to say is the reason I was happy he was playing and not Mustafi is just he's less prone to a really high-profile error. He's a bit more steady. Yeah. He's decent in the air. He's not a bad tackler. I think where he can sometimes come unstuck is when you get someone with real pace or trickery.
Yeah, and he's one-on-one with him.
Yeah, but we didn't let that happen yesterday with the way we set up. So, no, I was really happy with the centre-halves, and Tierney dropped in occasionally on the back three. I thought he had a really good game. I thought our fullbacks, actually, just give us a lot more than their fullbacks do. And when you set up in a diamond like they did, I think your fullbacks need to offer you more from an attacking perspective, because what ends up happening is you have McTominay dropping in at right midfield and Pogba dropping in at left midfield. And it almost ended up like a 4-4-2 at times, where you've basically just got centre midfielders playing roles they're not familiar with.
It was like,
you're trying to
Bruno
get them all
and
in the
Pogba
team.
would almost go wide.
And they just didn't look comfortable.
Yeah.
And the reason they're doing that is because they're fullbacks. For a while, I think they're both decent defenders. I think Wan-Bissaka probably more than Shaw. I think that going the other way, there is the question of what they can offer you. Wan-Bissaka, he just looks a bit uncomfortable on the ball to me. And look, he's a young man. There's a lot that can be sort of enhanced in his game. I think he's a very good defender. He's certainly someone I want in and around the England setup. But I didn't think they would hurt us from wide areas. And I think our fullbacks would have scared them a lot more than theirs would have scared us.
It'd be great in a 3 in my eyes, Wan-Bissaka on the right-hand side of a 3, because he's actually 6 foot. Speaking of, you said 4-4-2 though. Speaking of 4, let's talk about Bolton. That's 4-0 to...
Let's talk about Bolton.
4-0 to Leyton Orient. What's happening? We used to be Premier League.
Well, I mean, only you can really answer that, Bob. I mean, I'm looking at the table, and it doesn't make good reading for Bolton, does it? 2 wins.
We're also playing tonight, so we record this on a Thursday evening.
5 losses and 4 draws.
Yeah, God. Our keeper's
3
terrible.
draws.
Our keeper's terrible. You just can't save anything.
It wasn't good. I mean, when you concede 2 free kicks,
all he can save is penalties right now.
Yeah, I mean,
2 free kicks.
The manager called him out publicly, didn't he?
He did, man up. And then he got.
Obviously, I don't follow the lower leagues as closely, but I'm just looking at it, and I'm.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm looking at it from a Bolton perspective, and I think they were much fancied before the season to go up, or at least compete for promotion. Early days, small sample size, but it doesn't look like it's going to be the case.
10 games in now.
When does it come to a point for you where you have to question the manager?
Great question.
And what he's doing.
Or see, the difference is if we'd have got like a Kevin Nolan or someone of that ilk, like an ex-player, I would have much less patience, because they'd come in, they wouldn't try and instill a system, whereas Evert's trying to get the lads to play. He's playing this 3-4-3, and you can see it working, and it works in spells. It worked for 15 minutes, or it'll work. Say if they score first, the next 45 minutes will be us playing this great football, this pressing football. We just need that click, that first ill. We don't need that. We currently wait for a goal before we start playing, and that's just not good enough. We need to start from the first whistle. I mean, he said it in his interview all the time that we lose the game in the first 15. Well, against Leyton Orient, we had a chance at 1-0, where the ball's bouncing, it's a cross, and he's clearly told himself, I've got ahead of this, and he ends up just heading it because it's so low. He should have volleyed it. But even still, like, if it gets to the end of the season, if we're going to get relegated, that's not good enough. We can't go to non-league. We can't. I can't even fantasize the idea of it. But
I'm just remembering how bold and confident you were before the season, Bob. To be honest, what you were telling some of us about the manager and how you were going to go places, and
now they're above us.
Yeah, they're better without him, clearly.
But I mean,
it doesn't look great for Bolton. It's pretty dismal. There's not a lot that's good about it. Looking at the table, 8 goals scored, which is
there's lots
the lowest.
We've got lots of good players.
16 conceded.
That's a lot of goals. I mean, 4 of them were on Saturday, but we've got good players.
Need to stop giving away penalties. Bloody hell! How many penalties is that now?
Like 3. We saved 2 of them. But even still, like, we've got good. Ali Crawford's a great player. I mean, he got a total of 0.8 expected goals and assists on the weekend. And Aaron Doyle got 31 goals for Swindon last year. We've got good players, but they're injured. Like, Dennis Politic was easily a League 1/Championship player, but he's out for the year. And all of a sudden, it changes the complex of the year. Ronan Darcy, a 19-year-old, who's a centre attacking mid or centre mid, played up front for half 75 minutes because Delfonso got injured. So I never think injuries are excuses, but they have to. There's an asterisk beside it. Even still, Leyton Orient played really well. I think the 2 free kicks, you can count yourself unlucky, but then we got lucky to save the penalty. So ifs and buts.
Yeah, you were beating it. You were well beaten in the game.
Yeah, we were.
You deserved to lose 4-0, possibly not. It's always difficult when you're losing quite heavily. I always think XG can be a bit misleading because you're bound to throw the kitchen sink at it. I mean, I saw it on the weekend with the Aston Villa Southampton game. It was exactly the same. Now, funnily enough, Southampton scored 2 free kicks,
they did,
like Leighton Orient, but it was very similar in the fact that you're 4-0 up.
Yeah,
you're 4-0 down from Aston Villa's point of view.
If you look at the expected goals over the game, it actually stopped on this. They basically just stopped going for it after the 60th minute, after their 4th goal. So that kind of shows that maybe they could have got more.
And it's the opposite from Villa's perspective. What have you got to lose by that point? You're 4-0 down at home. You might as well throw the kitchen sink at it, which is exactly what they did. And to be fair to them, got it back to 4-3. And Jack Grealish bailed out my fantasy football this weekend. Jack Grealish and Ollie Watkins, they did all right for me there. It sort of was the difference between quite an average weekend and quite a good one for me in the end.
How many points you end up on?
I had 67 in the end.
That's a cracker.
Which, I mean, on this weekend, it's not bad, actually. My forwards did well for me. So I had Watkins, Kane, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who all scored. Captain Salah, and then Grealish was probably the standout performer.
That's not bad.
No, it's not bad. I'm sort of struggling to keep up ground at the moment, though, because a lot of people have similar players to me in a lot of the leagues I'm in.
How many total points are you on? Do you know?
Let me have a look for you now.
While he does that, I'll go through mine. So I got 49 points.
Yeah, go for yours.
I had a bit, like Bolton, a bit of an injury crisis. So in the last few weeks, I've had Van Dijk, obviously out for the year, so I had to transfer him out for Chilwell. And then I've had Castagna, Rodriguez, Mitchell. Size didn't play. So I ended up getting...
Sice didn't play. What a joke.
I know, he got me 0 points.
I didn't even find out that to the end of the game. I was like, yep, Wolves have kept a clean sheet. I was following the game, not closely, but I was keeping an eye on the score, just assuming he'd be playing because he has been. He's been playing quite well. And
so I've
I was gutted.
I've got 3 Wolves defenders, but one of them didn't play. But I still got clean sheets. All my defenders got clean sheets in Patricio, Cody.
It's not bad. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Clean sheets have been hard to come by in fantasy football, so that's pretty good.
It's calming down a bit now. If you see, like the clean sheets are coming
a little bit.
At the start.
I still think it's going to be a bonkers season, though.
Yeah.
And if you look at the results, and obviously fans not being there is obviously playing into that. But some of the results we've been seeing are just absolutely crazy. I mean, it's going to be an interesting season, that's for sure. So I'm 373 points, by the way.
I'm on 422, so I'm still...
There you go. See, look, playing catch up.
But yeah, no, I've Salah, didn't captain, I captained Son, who only got me 2 points. Zaha with 1. Hendricks with 2. Brewster with 2. So I'm playing bench players here. I'm playing £4.5 million players. And then Kane, vice captain, 6. And then Dominic Calvert-Lewin, 8. So... I mean, 50 points is not that bad. It's just below average.
It's quite. To be honest, it was a pretty. Yeah. What was the average this week?
53, which is actually quite high.
Right. Okay. So you sort of
I'm still top of half the leagues I'm in, so you know.
Yeah. It's not a disaster week. It's one of those you get a few injuries and it can kind of happen.
Yeah, it was damage limitations this week.
On fantasy football, for anyone listening, if you want a bit of advice, because I'm helpful like that. Looking at the fixtures, if you don't own any Aston Villa players, I consider you might want to look at their fixtures between now and Christmas.
Who would be your recommendations? Grealish, Watkins? Because mine would be.
Well, I've got them, but I've got Grealish and Watkins. But I'm just looking at their fixtures, right? They've got us next weekend, which it could be a hard game, it could not be. But then after that, they got Brighton, West Ham, Newcastle, Wolves, Burnley, West Brom, Crystal Palace, Chelsea. And then Man United, it starts to get more difficult after Christmas. I transferred them out. But between now and game week 15, Villa's a good option. And then once you get to game week 10, someone like a De Bruyne is a good option. I know Pep Guardiola likes to rotate. But when you get to game week 10, they've got a run of Burnley, Fulham, they've got Man United, then they've got West Brom, Southampton, Newcastle, Everton, Chelsea, Brighton. So there's some pretty winnable games for them.
I think Emi Martinez might be the shout for Aston Villa.
Well, you say that. I brought him in last week. He concedes 3 to Leeds, and then they concede 4 this week to Southampton. Yeah, true. Mind you, against his former club next week, obviously my boys.
Arsenal can't get more than 7
clean sheet, man of the match performance is pretty much guaranteed.
11 points, captured.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no. I've
Before we...
Go ahead.
Go on, mate. Sorry.
No, go ahead. It was nothing.
I was going to say, before we move on to talk about next weekend, do you have any standout performers from the weekend?
Sure.
Any teams you thought really stood out from the crowd, apart from Leighton Orient, of course?
I do think Southampton are starting to look good, and Danny Ings.
Yeah,
is
I mean
coming
your predictions, which were
I'll put my predictions on the screen now. Which
yeah, you'll want to see his predictions.
They were
questionable at best. Sort of, he seemed to look fondly upon Burnley, Brighton, and Southampton in particular. Two of those aren't doing very well. I mean, Burnley rooted to the bottom of the table.
I feel really unlucky with Brighton though, because I feel like they've been really unlucky.
Brighton have had some hard games. I mean, I can understand that from
Yeah.
an Arsenal perspective as well. Some of the fixtures we've had, but Brighton have had a tough start, and they've played some good stuff. I mean, they never ever should have lost to Man United. They were quite unlucky against Chelsea, pretty unlucky against Spurs. You know, the results. If they keep playing the way they are, you'd think the results are going to come. But
what about West Ham? They've had a really hard start to the year.
They have. I mean, I have to say, well, when I said I think we've had a hard start to the season, probably the only team that's had it harder is them. If you look at the run they've had, they've played us, they've played Spurs, they've played Wolves and Leicester, they've played Man City, and they've got Liverpool.
And they're 40.
They played Liverpool. Liverpool rather. So they've just come through a pretty tough run there. It starts to get a bit easier for them next weekend. They got Fulham. They look all right. I think they're one of those teams again. They kind of benefit from hard games.
Yeah.
Because the way they set up, they play the 5-4-1. They get the sort of wingers who can drop in and then flood the attack, Bowen and Fornals. And then when Antonio plays, I mean, he's a handful. He is a handful.
Yeah, he's
for any defence. I think they missed him against Liverpool. Had he been playing, they might have offered a bit more on the counter attack. But
I do think with Jared Bowen and that ilk of play, the squad's actually quite good. I actually think that their managers can be the limiting factor. Moyes he's doing very well.
I'll say this now that you've mentioned him. He would probably be one of my players to watch next weekend.
Jared Bowen. Nice.
They got Fulham at home. I think that they could. You know, they're a funny team, West Ham, and it's a funny league. They might slip up, but he'd be one I'd say to watch. The other would be Pedro Neto, who today has just signed a new contract for Wolves. And they've got Leicester at the weekend. Leicester, really good last night. They were my team of the weekend, I think, Leicester, against Leeds last night. I thought it was a really good performance they put in. And I just think this league's bonkers. Yeah. I really do. And I think Wolves will beat Leicester. Because I just think that the results I'm seeing are just so inconsistent with how teams have done against other teams. It's one of those. Leicester, every time I think they're a proper side, they throw a strange result in there. They lost 3-0 at home to West Ham.
That's
they
the one
lost
I was
at home
thinking
to
of,
Villa. But then they've come and beat us away 1-0. They went to the Etihad and scored 5. Very good win last night, scoring 4 against, that was their first really heavy loss, Leeds. And they were well beaten in all honesty. And
I never know where to place.
I don't know. I think Neto could have a big weekend for Wolves. But
I never know where to place Leicester after the end. The way they finished the end of the year, maybe that wasn't.
I mean, they should have been finishing third at a calendar and end up missing out on the Champions League. It was just a collapse of unbelievable proportions, wasn't it?
Yeah, but anyway, my player to watch next week would actually be Neil Maupay. So I've obviously watched him a lot. I often root for.
Left out the squad this weekend.
Was he? Oh.
So there was an article about it today, actually, in The Athletic. But he was left out the squad on Sunday against Spurs. He wasn't in the 18.
Oh, right.
And the reason it is he had a bust-up in training.
Did he?
Teammate.
Oh,
yeah, they haven't named the teammate.
He's been looking
really
good.
Well, I thought I'll let you make that prediction and then just sort of throw a spanner in the works.
He's taking 3.1 shots per 90. He's matching his XG, which is at 0.73 per 90. So he's taking shots that suggest...
See, Rob's put all this work into his
and he's not going to
next weekend, and he might even not be in the squad.
He'll be, oh god, I can't believe it. He's gone up to someone like Matthew.
Do you want to revise your prediction, or are you going to stick strong with it?
Yeah, no, he'll play. He'll play. They would have sorted it out. Give it a week. Yeah, he'll play.
A week.
And they've got Burnley, so and Burnley are shit for some reason.
Well, there's got to turn around for them at some point, hasn't it? Do we think
Burnley
go down?
Could Burnley go down? Early prediction.
Do you think they'd sack him if they were,
Yeah, like.
He's taken him down twice, so.
I can see it.
I wonder if they. No, is he taking him? No, he took him down once.
Yeah, once.
Took him down once, 14-15. They brought him back
Chris
up.
Eagles play from that. Yeah, don't know why they know that.
Yeah, I remember that season. They were sort of.
Yeah, they were a bit.
They weren't quite good. I don't know. It's funny because, 3-4 seasons ago. When they come back up, everyone said, yeah, they'll go down.
Yeah, everyone had 20.
And then the next season, they had quite a good season. I think they finished 7th.
Yeah.
And that kind of elevated them to the status of, you put them in sort of mid-table with, I don't know, the likes of Crystal Palace
Everton.
and Southampton and Maybe Everton.
Liverpool. No, I'm just kidding.
Liverpool fans will be loving that. Well, you don't associate them with relegation.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't necessarily throw their name in there straight away. They're not one of the first 3 or 4 teams that you'd necessarily suggest for it. But they're just making silly errors. I mean, I watched the game on Saturday. They played Chelsea, and they weren't that bad. They really weren't that bad for a lot of the game. Chelsea are starting to come together a bit more, I think. I think the goalkeeper's a good signing. I think Thiago's...
Their quality's burning through.
It is. I think defensive solidity for them will be the template for it all. I mean, they've kept, 4 clean sheets in a row? And the goalkeeper's come in. I think he's been really good. Conceded 1 goal in 6 games.
Everyone goes on about
Silva. Obviously, he had a slip on his debut, but I think he's been very solid since.
Everyone talks about the goalkeepers from Gen, the same club that Czech was at, and
he's worked closely with him.
Yeah, I'm just oh, give it a break. The kid he's not the next Czech. He's the new Mendy. I hate it when people do that. When
Big shout out the next Czech. It'd be pretty good for Chelsea if he was.
I hate that.
I do think. I think that Leicester will get beat by Wolves. Would be my shock prediction. Maybe that's not a shock to loads of people. Wolves are a good side, but I think that they will. I think they'll go there and win. I think Leicester look really good against teams that come onto them. So like Man City did, like we did. We're going to take it to them at home, even if we're not the most free-flowing attacking team. And like Leeds did last night, where they've struggled a bit more. And it might just be because of some of the home games they've had, but they've struggled in those home games where teams sit back and do the same thing to them. So it'd be interesting to see how they do against the Wolves. We know how Wolves play now. They get numbers up front that are pretty good on the counter attack, and they'll sit deep in their structure and play from there.
It'd be interesting to watch tactically.
I think Wolves have got some really good forwards actually. It will be really interesting to see how it plays out.
Mine's a bit more to the masses. My hot take. Pep will lose to Liverpool, and then everyone will say he hasn't won the Champions League since Barcelona. Can he really do it? It is.
Is that next weekend, Man City, Liverpool?
Sunday, 4:30.
That's a huge game, that is.
But even still, I think if he loses that,
well, I know we're on box office.
Yeah, you are.
Probably after that.
But if he loses that,
great.
You got to wonder.
Box office game. Guardiola, yeah. I don't think they will, though. I think Liverpool without Van Dijk. Liverpool are going to play differently, I think, without Van Dijk.
There'll be goals.
I don't think they'll commit the numbers that they have. Definitely be goals.
Yeah.
There'll definitely be goals in that game. Maybe Desmond, 2-2.
It's weird because it's the team that couldn't defend last year. It's the team with no defenders this year. So, it'd be interesting. Again, some good games.
It will be. And I don't think Liverpool are going to, it's hard to judge that exact fixture last season because it was the game after Liverpool
the 4-0
won the title, and you don't really know what frame of mind they're in. But on that particular occasion, they had a lot of chances, missed them, and then just got caught leaving space in behind, and City just exploited it. Without Van Dijk, which is what I was going to say, I don't think they'll play the same way. They're not going to play as high up the pitch. They're not going to commit as many men forwards because whoever plays, whether it's Fabinho and Gomez, whether it's Gomez and Matip, I don't think he'll play Nathaniel Phillips, although he had a good game at the weekend, actually, it must be said. I don't think he'll play him against Man City. It won't be Fabinho, will it? He's injured. So I don't know if Matip's fit. It'd be interesting to see who they go with. But whoever it is, they won't play the same way they would with Van Dijk in the team. Because whoever they play, they could be a good player. But they're not going to be as adept in duels as Van Dijk is. You can leave Van Dijk in acres of space and trust him as a 1-versus-1 defender. He's got the speed. He's got the physicality. Reads the game well. He can do it all. So I think it'll be a really interesting game. I think there will be goals, and I think that it will be bigger for Man City if they lose it than Liverpool if they lose it. Because if Liverpool lose it, I still think you can look at it and say, yeah, but they're missing Van Dijk. They're away from home. You need if you're trying to win the title as Man City, you need to beat your immediate rivals at home. And if they do that against Liverpool, of course they'll get praise for doing it. If they don't do it, they will get criticism for it. I don't know whether Guardiola said that Aguero's fit. Obviously, Jesus is out injured, so it kind of could be the tale of one stricken attack versus a stricken defence. Really,
Newcastle. They can't lose.
Yeah, they've played a game Leicester, haven't they? I know what you mean. If they do lose the game, then again you're looking at a gap opening up early in the season yet again. But it's a difficult one to call. I think if you're asking me to predict it, if anyone wins it, I think Man City will. I think they've been a bit more. It's strange if you look at their games so far. They've played 6 games, scored 9 goals, and conceded 8, and 5 of those were against Leicester. So they've actually been defensively pretty solid, especially since Diaz came in. He does look a good player. He looks really good in the air for his size as well. And I don't think he's at all a similar defender to him, but he reminds me a bit of Mustafi in the sense that he looks quite small. He's actually really good in the air.
Good set of legs.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
Absolutely. I think if anyone wins it, Man City do, because I just think they look a bit better defensively.
Talking of Man City have players, and there's players that we like, but for no reason. What a second. Mine is a weird one. Trossard. I don't know what it is. I don't even think he's that good. He just looks good when he plays. I like watching him play football, and yeah.
Should have had a penalty, I thought, in the Tottenham Brighton game, which, you know, it was a topic of discussion that game for quite a few reasons. I mean, some of the refereeing, and it was really poor. I thought the VAR was even worse, having looked at those decisions. And I think a lot of people have said it, and I agree. The biggest problem with VAR is not the sort of system itself; it's the people.
I think there was a place for VAR
not getting it right. I think used correctly there is. I mean, the World Cup's evidence of that. I think it's pretty decent by and large in the Champions League. But I thought it was interesting that the Brighton goal, which was a definite foul, by the way, on Højbjerg. It was a definite foul by Solly March. Slides in and gets a bit of the ball, but then takes the man. I thought there was 2 reasons it was interesting to me. One was this is the first time a referee's gone over to the monitor and stuck with his decision. That was the first time they'd gone. Every other time they'd gone over, they reversed whatever decision they'd given in the first place. So I thought that was interesting. I thought the second bit that was interesting was that decision informed by what had happened earlier in the game? And what I mean by that is Spurs got a dodgy penalty, which, I mean, we've seen it all before with Kane, where he pointed out on Match of the Day, where the ball's up in the air, and he looks where the defender's going to be, positions himself, and then doesn't jump for it. And I think it's dangerous. And it was actually an insult that he gets a foul for it. It's really dangerous play by him.
He said, "We've got too much pride as Englishmen to be like we shouldn't die. We shouldn't make the 50-50."
Well,
yeah,
sums it up then, doesn't it?
I mean.
But that, and also, the second thing I was going to say is there was a couple of dives earlier in the game from Kane and Son. Blatant dives. I mean, really, really poor. And we've seen it before with them. I mean, I sound very bitter about it. I think they're both really good players. But we've seen before that they, go to ground slightly easily, for want of a better term. Was the referee possibly informed by that when he looked at the VAR? Did he think Højbjerg went down a bit emphatically? I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, why didn't he overrule himself? Because it was an obvious foul. It was an obvious foul. So
it's VAR. It's here to stay. So
Trossard should have had a penalty. Back to what you originally said, and looks a tidy little player.
Scored a good goal
against a few times against Man United, didn't he?
Everyone says Kepa could have done better. I'm not really sure, but he's a tidy player. He's only 20. Well, he's 25 now. Shit, he's quite old. No, I like him. What player do you like?
It's quite an open-ended question, isn't it? It is. If I had to pick a player that doesn't play for Arsenal, I like for no reason. There was an article about him today in The Athletic, actually, funnily enough. It was actually about Leicester overall and kind of their recruitment policy and how they are very good at identifying players, identifying potential talent, getting them in, and then they perform pretty well. If you give them time to settle in, and then they can sell them and they go again. And you've seen them do it with the likes of Mahrez, Maguire, Chilwell, and they've reinvested the money really cleverly with the likes of Ndidi and the player I'm about to say, which is Tielemans. I think he's a really good player. I think he's very, very technically gifted. I think he's an excellent passer of the ball. The goal they scored against us, the one time in the game we didn't close him down and allowed him time on the ball. He puts a really good ball over the top, and it gets squared for Vardy, who puts it in, of course, against Arsenal. And it just had to be. But and then he scores 2 goals last night. I think he's a really, really good player. Someone that now, if Leicester wanted to sell him tomorrow, what do you think he'd go for?
So
60, 70 million?
2 years ago, I think it was. He was one of only 10 players to make 3 dribbles and make 3 tackles and interceptions per 90 in the Euro's top 5 leagues, and like the other ones were.
He's a very good player. He just looks like he can do a lot of things. I think he's a really good passer of the ball. Chips in with goals. He can carry it. I think he's just a very, very good player. I wish he was playing for my club. So he's an obvious one that for me at the moment. Maybe because of what happened last night and what I saw in the Athletic this morning.
Think what it is the big team, top 6 will be linked with these players like Leicester. Like they were linked with, I think Arsenal were linked with Soyuncu. I'm pretty sure Tottenham were linked with to Leicester, but they're not willing to.
I think a lot of clubs were. He was at Anderlecht,
and then went to he flopped at Monaco.
Did he go to Monaco, right? Because I know there was a lot of people tracking him when he was at Anderlecht. He was a real prospect, wasn't he? And looks a really good player. I mean, if they hold on to him, fantastic for them. But even if they don't, look at what they would get for him. I think he would be a really, really good player to have signed, put into the team, and then you've seen him prosper, and then you can sell him and you can go again. I think it's a really good business model. And I think for them, especially when you look at someone like Vardy and how good he's been for them and the sort of career he's had in the Premier League. I saw a debate on TalkSport earlier saying, is he in the top 10 Premier League players of all time? And they weren't, and I didn't agree with it. But what they were saying is he's come to the Premier League age 27. He's well up there in the amount of goals he's scored. And the actual story as well. I mean, Fleetwood Town, for goodness sake.
I'll remember for the rest of my life.
Of course, he's top goal scorer in a Premier League winning effort for probably the biggest underdogs in the history of the sport. And I think for them, probably the most daunting challenge they face is replacing him. I think he's a really hard person to replace. But when you look at his age, he's still going pretty strong. But in the next few years, he's going to have to be a consideration for them. And
I remember thinking,
we'll see how they go about it.
But he got a bit. Yeah, true.
It's easy to say now, isn't it?
Yeah. When just before he broke on that year with Genk, he got like 16 goals in 14 games, and that hat-trick in the Champions League. I thought he'd be a good, £15 million player that you can just take a punt on. And if you sign 4 of them, one of them will come good.
100%.
I do like Leicester. I like the way that they just, I also like.
I don't like them because not because I dislike the way they operate. It's exactly the opposite. I'm jealous of it. If you look at their success has come at the expense of a club like us, who are a much bigger club than Leicester, let's be honest. But the way we're run, they're so much better run than us. It's like not even funny. Their recruitment's been a lot better. Their ambition they won the league unexpectedly, but then they brought in a manager like Brendan Rodgers, who I think is actually a really good manager and sort of he's taken them to the next level in terms of where they actually want to be. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, no, I just like
100%. And the way they operate is, I'm envious.
Operate like that.
Yeah, I bet you do. Who have they got next?
Mansfield tonight, so 0-0. Well, I haven't got notifications. So I imagine it's 0-0. But away from the game, this bit's a bit weird. I'm not sure if it'll stay around, but we've got some random news stories that I found. So, rare new two-headed snake slithers into woman's house, which asks the question, what would be the worst animal to have 2 heads? I hope it's in America or Australia. I hope it's not in the UK. Yeah.
For real? I'm not going to lie. That, for me, would
North
be
Carolina,
an absolute nightmare. Isn't there that 3-headed snake thing in like Greek mythology? I can't remember what it was called. Where it was this snake that had 3 heads. Either, it was like a 3-headed dog.
What would be the worst animal to have 2 heads? Yeah, snake.
Probably that, to be honest, mate. For me, good God, it's probably about one of the only things I'm scared of. I've never encountered a snake, but I would have a phobia, 100%. Just the way they sort of sliver, they're intimidating.
What animal would you?
They're intimidating.
What animal?
Glad we don't get them here.
Weirdly,
So
I
much.
live close to one of the only places you can get adders, which is Cannock Chase. Anyway, what animal would you like to have two heads? I'd love to see a penguin with two heads. I'd pay so much money to see a penguin with two heads. Yeah,
I think that's a good shout, actually. A two-headed penguin.
Yeah, it would.
It'd have to be something friendly, wouldn't it? I think anything intimidating,
or
like a snake,
what about a two-headed alpaca?
like a lion or something like that. Good God.
Also,
Oh, brilliant. How do you find these articles? That's what I want to know.
Google them.
I'll have to look where this was because, I mean, Christ, that is...
Yeah, imagine
going
you
through
know,
that.
oh, it's a
Good
snake.
God.
Oh my God, it's got two heads. Another story I found was a cricket game breaks out in Peckham. Yeah.
I saw that. They were having a little game in the street. That's right, my
do you live in
street. That
Peckham?
is. Bit of you know, tap and run
When you're
cricket in
drunk.
the street. Taking
Well,
a
every
quick
time you take a
single, you
you've got
know.
to take a single shot of vodka as well. It's genius.
I've done a bit of
Have you?
drunk cricket before, actually. It's bloody difficult. Yeah, it's. I was sort of seeing three or four.
What would be the
cricket
worst
balls
sport
at
to play
the time.
drunk?
It was. Well, I've done it. It's for me. It was
Was it?
golf. It was absolutely impossible. It was impossible. So I was out on the golf course. This was a few years ago. I was in Portugal, and I was playing so badly. And what they do is they like, you could tell this is quite a posh resort I'd gone to, and they send like this buggy bar out. I was like, fuck it, give me 3 Sagreses, I think they're called. So I just took 3 of them, necked them, and then it comes around again. I was like, yeah, give me a couple more. And I got to about the 11th hole, and I was absolutely fucking gone. It was horrendous. And yeah, it was bloody difficult, mate. Good God. That would be up there. You wouldn't want to do something like, you know, you wouldn't want to do
American football.
go-karting drunk,
Or
would you? A bit
go-karting,
of
yeah.
drink driving.
Literally drink driving, but with more.
Bit of drink driving. A bit of F1 drunk.
Lewis, where are you going? Go
What
on
about
the
you?
other side. Yeah, American football would be funny.
I'll tell you what, on the F1, I thought George Russell must have been drunk on
He
Sunday.
must have been.
He just,
He's had too many.
Christ, the poor boy, he gets up into the points for possibly the first ever time, and then he just floors it on the throttle and just nosedives into the hoardings. I felt really sorry for him, actually. He was distraught.
I can imagine. Yeah, apparently he was quite shocked on the radio. He was just like, "What the fuck has happened here?"
I know, he was... You got to feel for him.
Yeah.
Got to feel for him.
He was doing what you were doing every time I went into the pits. Had 3 Jaeger bombs. Fuck it. Go on, Claire Williams. Put on you.
Yeah.
That's something I would pay to. I would give money to see Claire Williams drunk.
I think she's been drunk the whole time she's been
True,
managing Williams,
yeah.
hasn't she? Good God.
There's that bit in
Pig's
the
ear of
there's
that.
that bit in the F1 Drive to Survive where she goes into the she goes into the what's it called, engineering factory, and she just goes, "Nice colour, isn't it?" Nothing about the car other than the livery. I was like, what? You know, why of all that? Talk about the suspension. Talk about your drivers, not the livery.
I know.
Yeah, it weirded me
I
out.
was. Look. It's a hard job at Williams, and we know that kind of the way F1 works is it can get into a bit of a vicious cycle where if you're not doing well, you're not pulling the money in, you can't make the modifications to the car, you don't get the performance,
Yeah.
and it kind of just keeps repeating itself. And you've seen it with Williams over the past decade or two. They've really struggled, and it's a hard job for her, but it doesn't mean it wasn't done badly.
Yeah, I agree.
And,
But when you say that, they were good. First time Hamilton won the championship with Mercedes. In that final
you're
race.
looking what, like 12 years ago, 13 years ago?
No. I mean with Mercedes. So it was.
Oh, Mercedes. Sorry, I thought it was the first time he won it.
When he won it in Abu Dhabi,
Yeah.
2 Williams cars were second and third, Bottas and Massa. So
Yeah, he did well there, Bottas, didn't he?
he was. But he should have
Well
stayed.
there.
Well, actually,
Not
he
to get
shouldn't
onto
have.
F1. If anyone wants to come on the podcast and talk about F1,
Or if you want us to make an F1 podcast,
we're more than welcome. Absolutely.
I've got
If
lots of
the
free time.
demand's there for it, I'd more than welcome the discussion. We've
Yeah.
certainly got people we could ask to come and appear on it.
Anyway,
More knowledge than myself or Bob.
thank you for listening. If you've got this long,
Are we going to make some quick fire predictions for next
we can
weekend
do,
before
yes,
we
sure, fuck
before we
it.
end things up? I think what we're going to do is each week we'll make our predictions on each game, and we'll keep a running tally of it. And when it comes to the end of the season, we'll sort of see who's done better. Because obviously Bob's he's been bold with his predictions. He's known to be bold, and we'll see how he does. So if I quickly go through them, we've got Brighton, Burnley,
2-0
Sky
Brighton.
Sports box office.
Oh, that'll be a box office game. Fucking hell. Why do they keep putting Burnley behind it? They've got to learn. Yeah, 2-0 Brighton.
So you think Brighton win? I think a draw. I think maybe 1-1. But yeah, I'll go draw.
Southampton, Newcastle. Southampton
win that game, I think. Yeah,
I'm thinking like 4-0 as well. Everton, Man United.
Such a hard game to call this because obviously they're both coming off the back of a loss in the league. Everton lost 2 in a row. I think you've seen a bit with Everton their lack of potentially squad depth or players as good as the players they've got in certain positions. Coming back to bite them. Obviously, Richarlison's been suspended. James missed out at Newcastle. Is Richarlison back for this? I think he's got one more game. Okay. He's sent off against Liverpool. Digne's back from suspension. Yeah. So obviously Everton changed the one game. Did Everton win?
Yeah, and Ollie gets sacked afterwards. Fuck it.
That should have been your hot take.
That should have been my hot take.
I think I'm really straight. The problem with Ollie is one of those managers. I've said this for a rival fan. He's actually perfect because he never does quite enough to get sacked. But equally, you're never worried about them long term. Like, I do not think he will win them a title or get anywhere near. Yeah. Maybe he'll have a run in the Champions League because it looks like they're sort of better in knockout competition. But he never does enough to get sacked, which sort of makes me think he'll pull a result out the bag. He's known for this. I think they'll draw, maybe like a 1-1
there. Crystal Palace Leeds 1-0. Patrick Ramsey.
I think this is going to be a really interesting game to watch. Probably my sort of understated game from the weekend, given that Leeds lost quite heavily for the first time since they've been back up on Monday. Palace have been dreadful, really, since they beat United. They've been absolutely terrible.
Oh, they beat Fulham.
They were really, really abject against Wolves. Yeah. I think a draw. I think a 2-2 draw. Yeah.
Chelsea win for the next one. It's Chelsea.
I think Chelsea will beat Sheffield United. Yeah, Sheffield United. It's funny because they've started playing better, but then the fixtures have been harder. I mean, they've played us, Liverpool, City, and now they've got Chelsea. But it'd be interesting to see again with Chrissy Wilder a couple of months down the line if they're still struggling down there.
Money on him first to be sacked. I've just said Ollie will be sacked.
I think it'll be Bilic.
Oh yeah,
it'll be Bilic.
True. After losing to Fulham,
he looks the obvious one, doesn't he?
He does. Fulham, West Ham v Fulham. I'm going to go for a Fulham win. Mitrovic hat-trick.
Do you know what? Funnily enough, as am I, because I think West Ham are one of those teams. They're a bit like Leicester to a lesser extent. Every time you think they're back on track, they just throw an absolute garbage result in there. I mean, all the good results they've had since Newcastle, who they lost to. Newcastle are by far the worst team they played this season, and they lost 2-0 to them.
Yeah,
which is the heaviest defeat of the season. Bonkers, isn't it?
West Brom, Spurs, and then also Bilic gets sacked afterwards.
I agree. I think Spurs will win. I think Bilic is.
We're in November now. It's second season.
Yeah, I think it is. He did a good job getting them up, but I think he could be out the door before long.
Leicester Wolves. You said Wolves win. I'll go Leicester win.
I think Wolves win that. I think. Look, don't get me wrong. If Leicester win it, I'll be no surprise whatsoever. But I just fancy it again. I fancy a surprise result there. I think Wolves on paper.
Yeah.
Their setup could really trouble Leicester, and I think they could get a result there.
Man City v Liverpool win. Easy.
I think a draw. I think if anyone wins, it's Man City, but I think a draw. 2-2 draw.
And Arsenal v Villa. I'm going to go for Villa win because I think I feel like I'm going to predict Arsenal to lose a lot just because I'm with an Arsenal fan. But
I think we'll win the game. I think you have to predict us to win the game.
Losing 1-0.
Look, would I be surprised if we lose it? Probably not, but I don't expect us to lose it. I think Villa could give us trouble though.
Yeah.
With Grealish and Barkley and Watkins, they'll
get him in this week.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway. See. I think we'll win the game, but I won't be surprised if we lose it. And that's my closing quote.
Thank you for listening. And
thanks for listening, guys.
Follow us on Twitter. Everything will be in the description. If you're on Spotify, follow us. And thank you for listening.
Get any of your suggestions in there as well. Anything you want us to talk about, any way you want the podcast to structure. I mean, it'd be real help to us if you guys just let us know, really. If there's anything you want improving, we'll have a Discord server going so you can put it in there. You can tweet us. Bob will have the official
Twitter. Yeah, it's
Twitter
fine. I'll put it on screen. You'll see it now. Anyway, enjoy.
Yeah, thanks for listening.